What's going on, everybody? And welcome to the very first episode of Queue Up, a PvP talk show, just talking about changes, talking about balance, talking about all sorts of stuff like that. But we are joined today by three special guests. We are joined by Avenge. You guys know him as the Rep Paladin, who competed at the recent North American regionals. Doomsen also competed at the regionals in Europe, and Supatease also competed at the North American regional. So, welcome, guys. Thanks again for coming on the show. I really appreciate it, especially so short notice. All of you guys were like so down, but I really appreciate it, guys. Um, so today I have a few topics of discussion, mostly balance. I think that that's like one of the most chatted about things on the forums is that I really wanted to give like just the general public a view inside some of like the highest rated players, the most talented players in the world. It's like my mind when they're like reading patch notes. I feel like sometimes when I'm talking to a high rated player, they see things that I wouldn't normally see. They can like say, well, that's going to be overpowered, or well, that doesn't do anything, like versus I'll just be reading the patch notes and and I'll think things are going to be good when they're really not. But so that's a big reason why I wanted to create the show. But also, I think it would be awesome just to have conversation about this sort of thing. I feel like nothing. There's never really been a PvP talk show with like really high rated players. So I really appreciate you guys coming on. But that there was recently an RBG tournament. What did you guys think of that, Super Tease? Did you like that RBG tournament? Think that's a good idea?
I think an RBG tournament in general is a good idea in terms of like it was exciting to watch. It was fun to watch. I think there's obviously some community problems that are a bigger issue than actually just doing an RBG tournament itself. And obviously people ran into that played in the tournament that I talked to. But as far as like being just a general spectator, it looked like a really good idea and it looked like a lot of fun. Um,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I was watching it, I'm just every single time I see a new event that's being held for just the PvP community in general, it kind of excites me. But an RBG tournament was kind of tenacious. But Avenge, did you enjoy the RBG tournament? Did you have a chance to watch it?
Yeah, I tuned in for most of it. Um, Not the entire thing. I don't know too much about the drama that went on, just because I'm not as involved with RPGs. The last time I actually did them competitively was like Cataclysm. For me, that's kind of when they went downhill because of the introduction of the whole cheating thing. But
Yeah.
that's when the DDoS got pretty scummy and all that stuff and all the map exploits. But
That's
I
a
did find it pretty interesting. I'm pretty happy that they did something different. Like, I think that's pretty cool of them.
Yeah, seriously. Special shout out to Vadrick. I don't know if you guys are familiar with him, but he is the gentleman that provides us with the Arena Live 3 and also the RBG tournament with their interface. But Doomsen, did you get a chance to watch it? I know that you're in Europe and the time zone's different and everything like that, but
Oh,
did you see it?
Um, I actually didn't, which I could have watched it. I just decided to not. Just my personal preference of
Yeah.
um not liking RPGs anymore. But generally, I like the idea of people trying to get more tournaments going, just like you guys. I think that's really awesome and it helps the community a lot. Um, Therefore, big respect for the ones who hosted it, and I'm sure that it surely was really enjoyable for quite a few people.
Yeah. It had a crazy turnout. They had at one point like close to 5,000 viewers, which is pretty insane for a for not Recful in the WoW section. So I was really impressed by Gamers League. They definitely this is like their very first tournament, and when I did my very first tournament, it didn't get many viewers at all, but it was very not organized. It was not held together well, but we didn't get that many viewers. We actually, so I guess I was a little blessed by that because a lot of people didn't see my first run. But yeah, hats off to those guys. They definitely put in the hours. So shout out to Gamers League. But WoW tournaments in general, like arena tournaments, though, there's a couple popping out of nowhere. Well, not out of nowhere. TOC 2.0 is coming out. Shout out to those guys. Tournament of Champions. That's going to be happening Saturday and Sunday. The Tournaments of Champions. Some really awesome players are going to be competing there. And but there's another tournament that was potentially banning classes. What do you guys think about that? Like just preventing compositions, specific compositions, from playing in tournaments. Do you think that there's that big of a significant advantage between like I forgot, what was it, like Mage Druid? I remember you tweeted something about it, Supatease.
Yeah, it's the Pro Game X tournament that I'm helping out with in March. When I was talking to the admins for it, they felt with like current balance and everything else, they wanted to have more diversity. They didn't want to be basically donating money to RMD. It was one of the main complaints. So they wanted to like let a disc priest like have a chance, like play RMP, have something like that, like so you're not just completely outmatched. It was more of just a generalist kind of feel for what the metagame is right now, that they didn't feel it would be appropriate to let it in. You could say like it would be better to have banning. I think it would be too, but the main issue with that is like people don't have a lot of characters at level 100. I think the tournament gear is a really good addition. Like if you did want to multi-class, in tournaments at least, you don't need like a PTR or a private tournament realm itself. You can just buy the tournament gear. If you wanted to multi-class, I think it's more of a test run. They wanted to let some other comps have a bit more of a chance, and then see how it goes after that. See if it doesn't work. See if it's okay to let it back in. It wasn't meant to be like a huge stab at Mage Druid, but that's just my understanding of it. It wasn't like my decision.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I want personally, when our tournaments and GCD TV's tournaments, we want a banning phase more than anything. That's something that we don't talk about enough. We really do want to evolve to the point where compositions and changing compositions is something that you need to do to be successful. That's like the end goal. So I love that, but like you said, there's issues. There's not enough variety yet. So we're thinking about that in the future. But Avenge, what do you think about tournaments when it comes involved? Like, do you think that banning specific compositions is something that we should do in the future? Like for right now, in the current state of the game, do you think that that's something that is necessary to have a fair tournament?
If it's necessary to be fair to everyone, definitely. I mean, essentially what people are doing with these class bans and comp bans are just basically Blizzard's not doing enough of the micro tweaks to the balance, right? I mean, every couple of weeks they should be doing small updates and, a little bit of a nerf at a time and make sure everyone's fully geared and all that business. But they don't usually. It comes in big patches where the big changes are. So between those big patches, right? I mean, you're going to have a dominant, at least a few dominant comps, and the only way you can make it fair for, if you play a class as your main that's not in one of those dominant comps, there has to be some sort of ban system to make it fair, right? So.
Yeah, absolutely. That brings up an interesting point. When it comes to arena tournament formats, though, I feel like it might be a little bit different than ladder comps. If you kind of know what's going to be coming ahead, maybe you could change your composition up a little bit to try to prevent the hard. But like when you're forming a team to go and get like a high rating on the ladder, you kind of want to make your team as universal to other viable compositions as possible. But at the moment, I feel like there's certain compositions, even with preemptively knowing what you're about to face, can still be very difficult to try to prevent a hard counter. But Doomsen, when it comes to like this tournament, where tournaments in the future even, do you think that it might be necessary to ban specific compositions, or do you think that we should just kind of pray for 6.1?
I actually hope for 6.1 to make a difference. The thing about banning comps, well, I happen to play Druid. I happen to play the Mage. Probably 90% of my games I've ever played in this game. And, for me, it would be bad. Because I couldn't compete with what I'm the best at. And, me practicing for weeks or months. And then, funny, a tournament is getting announced with quite a nice prize pool. And you actually can't compete. For me personally, or for that person, it's not that nice.
I can see that.
But that being necessary is, like Avenge said, it shouldn't be the case.
Right.
Like before that happens, Blizzard should actually notice it and do something, which isn't that easy.
No, it's not. I love your idea, Avenge, about the micro tweaks. I think that's an awesome idea to keep the game really interesting and keep the players motivated to try new things. Is consistent changes, not like these long-term changes that we've been seeing. But at the same time, It does make these patches a lot more hyped, you know.
Yeah.
So the banning phases of tournaments, so we can all sort of agree that that'd be an interesting aspect of a tournament, but how exactly would we make that happen? I mean, I feel like we'd have to have more than just 3-player teams, but Supatease, how would you make a banning phase tournament happen?
Yeah, I think it was either a Bleach Bones tournament or a
Bleach
Pro
Bones
Game
did
X
it, yep.
tournament. Yeah, it was last year. I wasn't part of it. They had banning phases, and I watched some of the VODs for it, and it looked kind of interesting because you ended up with like weird comps like Hunter, Shadow Priest, Shaman going against like Feral, Druid, Lock, Holy Paladin. Like you get some
Yeah,
interesting combinations that you don't ever see. Like nobody's like, oh, that's OP. I'm going to play that. It makes it more interesting, but you can't really do it with just three people. I don't think.
right.
Um, and I mean, it would limit players would have to be you would have to multi-class to be able to play in a tournament because if you said I'm a Resto Shaman, I only play Resto Shaman, and you fight a team that says, oh, we're banning Resto Shaman, all right, I guess you're 2v3ing because I can't play anything else. So
Yeah, that's
uh,
the worry, right? Avenge, do you think that having a banning phase in a tournament is a good idea to begin with?
I don't think it should be necessary to begin with,
yeah,
but
Right.
I mean, going back to what you said to make it fair for everyone, I mean, it sort of has to be, right, to make it fair. I mean, should it be or should it not be? It's sort of different than making it fair because, like Supati said, you only play one class and you get banned, and then what are you going to do, right?
Right.
So,
Doomsen, now, would you be interested in watching a tournament with a banning phase? Is that something that you'd want, or do you like it how it's currently being held with like these would you like well, ideally all we want is to have every composition be like
yeah,
50-50 against each other, but there's going to be advantages. There's been like this rock paper scissors sort of like sort of way that these compositions have queued into each other forever. Like there's always been comp advantages, but it's just that like we have to level our tunes to a max
yeah,
level, gear them completely out, and then compete. So it's not like we have the choice to, like in a League of Legends game, ban somebody out or choose a different character or champion when our champion gets nerfed. You know what I mean? So, but Doomson, to go back to you, for like a banning phase tournament, is that something you're interested in?
I also watched the Bleach Bones tournament. I think it's actually 2 years ago now, because I think it was an
Long
early
time
mob.
ago. But
yeah. It
it's
might have been.
still shaking up the community, you know? Like that's exactly what I loved about it, is that people talk about it to this day like it was a good idea, and I love that tournament. Like some of the funkiest stuff came out of that.
Yeah, the idea was really good. It just there were a few minor tweaks, like you know, Hunter being every spec. You couldn't just ban Hunter.
Right.
You had to ban specs, so the Hunter just decided to play a different one, and they could still possibly run with a kind of OP comp, which was probably one of the reasons the team that won the tournament actually ended up being the winner. Um, I just think it's really hard. I also only play Druid. I suck at any other class there possibly is.
Right.
Um, so it's really hard, and you probably need more than 3 people in one team to make that happen, like they had. But then again, to make that happen, you probably need to have like a very large prize pool and a very good organization to make that happen, because it's not that easy to find 5 players that will constantly play with each other to prepare for the tournament. So I think from how I know the community, um, yeah, they must have like a reason to compete.
Right, right, absolutely. Having the incentive to compete, though, one thing I would like to note is that the PvP community has been phenomenal with our tournaments. When it comes to like us putting our tournaments together, people are ready to come and compete just to support us, including you and Venge. You guys have come in and really created a lot of hype around our tournament, just coming and participating. So for that, I thank you and I thank everyone else who has been supporting us. It's in every other tournament out there. It's been awesome. I love the support that the community is bringing. Because before these tournaments happened, I don't know, I felt like the PvP community sort of had like an outlook on it that was almost negative. But I just want to talk about the current state of the game. Just briefly, considering 6.1's like right around the corner, so this current state of the game is not going to be relevant really soon. But Resto Druids right now, going back to you, Doomsen, a lot of people say that they're overpowered, but do you believe that they're overpowered? Do you believe that Resto Druids need a nerf, or do you think the other healers are in need of a buff?
Going into Wards of Draenor, I was not looking forward because playing on the beta gave me an idea how things are going to turn, and I really hope they will change. But the way Druid turned out with a bit of gear is that they're just really forgiving. Like, I think a lot of people agree that in the former expansions, Druid was like, or Resto Druid was one of the most tricky healers. Like, to play it really good or like perfect, it had a really high skill cap. Like, you had to be really good to make the best out of Druid that is possible. And I don't actually think that anyone ever played Druid to its max. Going into Wards of Draenor, that kind of got nerfed, as in you would need to be the best Druid to actually get rating or to keep your team alive, or to deal with a tricky situation, because you had that kind of thing, UNS being kind of like a lay on hands with the force that you have and the regrowth glyph and whatever. So you just had to live. You could be in a 10 seconds to CJ and you come out UNS, your team's full. Like, that person could be full. Or Genesis having, you actually don't have to cast, you just have to hard, and so you wouldn't have to deal with all the interrupts you could possibly get. And all of that just being way too strong. And I think all of that turned Druid into a very simple healer regarding keeping your teammates alive.
So, like, the overall skill cap you feel has kind of dropped down since MoP?
Since World of Draenor.
Gotcha.
Yeah. I actually know a few players who, they're good. They have multiple rank 1 titles, but they started to play Druid this season. And they're around the same rating as I am. I'm not really trying for rating, but they're under the top 100 or top 150 playing Druid for a few weeks. And I don't think that should be a thing.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. What do you think, Avenge? Do you think that Resto Druids are on a tier above all these healers and should be knocked down a peg, or should these healers be knocked up a peg?
Well, just to reinforce what Doomsen said, we got Danny Carey, rank 1 Druid, and he played Druid for less than a month at that point. Van Rookie was in full blues, and we got 2.6k back when rank 1 was like 2,800. Like, what Doom's saying is there's so much room for error right now. You can just reroll Druid and do better than, if you were a priest or if you're a holy pally in most cases.
Right.
So I definitely think that's a problem. And it just so happens that, like, for example, Ret Hunter, the best healer is a Druid. Should it be a Druid? No.
No.
It should definitely be something like a priest, maybe a shaman, right? I prefer priests, but they're just useless priests. Like, priests are a free win, right? You fight a priest, it's a joke right now.
I feel like
it's
they
unfortunate.
have so much problems catching up,
Yeah,
compared to a Druid, anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and fighting a Druid complicates the game from my point of view. Like, if it's a shaman, right, it's like not a problem. You have to get through his link, and you have to get, his NS. That's about it, right? You fight monk, you have to get through his bubble. But if you fight a Druid, like Doomsen said, it's a lay on hands, like, all the time. I mean, Genesis is absurd in my opinion. The good Druids know how to circumvent their counters. I mean, you think of a Druid, you think of purge spam. What is he going to do? Well, you just rejuve the other 2 targets and you just spam Genesis, and then it's no problem. You just get around the purge spam, and they're way too versatile. Yeah. They have too much mobility. They have too much control. I think they need to be tuned down, just not too much. Don't blow them out of the water just because they're overrepresented. Tune them down a little bit at a time. Tune the priest up. Keep the other 2 at the same. Maybe do a little tweaks to this dispel meta, because it's, I think everyone agrees it's pretty stupid, the spam purge, right? Mm-hmm. It should be a thought and a decision, not, I've got nothing to do, I'm going to spam some purges right now, right?
All right, Supatease, same question. Do you think the Druids need a nerf?
I definitely think they need a nerf. Same thing as Avenge was saying. I don't think that they should be nerfed to the point where they're useless, but they are making a lot of changes that may or may not affect the level of strength at like the high end. Like Iron Bark no longer usable. Wise Silence is kind of like how many silences are in the game? Like how often will this affect you? In reality, it's like Rogues, Shadow Priests are the main like DK sometimes. So it's not like a huge nerf to that, but I definitely think that Nature's Swiftness regrowth is an ability that should be looked at specifically for nerfing. Uh, Genesis, it's already been said, like it should be looked at for nerfing. Um, I would say that like some of this more skill-oriented stuff with Druid that still remains is like getting a good Cyclone. If there's a difference between a Druid getting a good one, I mean, outside of playing a class or a comp like RMD where CC is being spammed, so it's kind of like if you get interrupted, oh, it's not a big deal. I'm going to get covered with Polymorph. But if you play Resto Druid comps that don't have mages on them and you're the main CC, like you're relied on to get something, you can get punished really hard if you're not able to like juke and interrupt, get a Cyclone off, position differently. Um, but yeah, I definitely think that priests are a healer that needs to be brought up, and maybe druids toned down just on their NS Genesis. Um, it's hard. Like Resto Druids were more known for not being able to recover from a high damage. Like if they fell behind, they wouldn't be able to catch up immediately. It would be a struggle. They would need help to get back up and healing. But now you just press the one button, you're full health. Like I've been playing Resto more now than Moonkin. I think I have like 700 games on Resto now, and it's kind of like I'm already planning to do that. Like if I go into a polymorph, I'm already planning what I'm going to do out of it. Okay, I'm going to save this, use NS, and you can kind of stagger your cooldowns to a point where you never run out of an option. You always have an Iron Bark, you always have a Swift Mend, Rejuve Genesis, you'll always have an NS. You never run out of options. That's the one main thing I think for Resto Druid strength.
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but I remember there used to be a time where Resto Druids needed to get Cyclones out, like to not fall behind. Again, with certain compositions, as you can imagine, but like they would fall behind if they weren't cross CCing. Am I wrong about that? I feel like they don't necessarily need to anymore, again, with a majority of their comps. But combat rogues. I've had Nesper take my tournament 2 times in a row now. He's been doing great with Rogue Lock Druid. So he's got the Druid and the combat rogues. But are combat rogues overpowered? Avenge, are combat rogues overpowered right now?
To me, being a ret, we have a lot of tools against it. I don't find them, that bad. It was much worse with the 8-second kidney.
Right.
I don't think they should ever be better than Subtlety, right? But
yeah. I feel like they definitely, especially with that, there's a passive ability that they have that when they spend their combo points, they get their killing spree back. And I feel like, I don't know, I feel like I want them to be like glass cannons. I don't want them to have as many defenses as a subtlety. I want them to be able to take more damage. But Doomsen, what do you feel? How do you feel about combat rogues?
Okay, to begin with, I started playing with a friend 2 months ago who has been 1800 at that point, playing Combat Rogue. Well, make it short, he's 2900 now. And still doing a lot of mistakes. And, he's probably going to get rank 1 playing Combat Rogue for 2 months. And I think that's a good example that when you play Combat Rogue, you just don't have to take care of, like, you don't have to really rotate your things. You have your killing spree, you have your adrenaline rush, you pop them, probably kill something or force something. And you can just pop them random, like I play RMD with him. And you play with Sub Rogue, your mage gets CC, doesn't get anything off. Your Sub Rogue is not going to solo anyone,
Mm-hmm.
But the Combat Rogue is going to lock the target so long down and get you so low that even though the mage has been at 5 seconds CC, the kill opportunity still isn't gone, because Combat Rogue damage doesn't stop after killing spree. They probably still have a buff, and they're still gonna have the damage. And I think that shouldn't be a thing. I think to do damage, or at least decent damage, it should require coordination. That's how I see rogues. Always seen rogue.
Yeah, I like that too, man. So what would you change if you had the ability to change combat rogues? What would you change about them to make them a bit more fair?
To be honest, I prefer sub to be good, so I wouldn't mind Combat Rogue being gone. Kind of feeling sad for Woundman then, but I don't know. I think Combat is just, I don't think you can balance them without making them viable. You know, you're probably gonna make them unviable if you make them take as much skill as a sub rogue.
Right.
And I think that should be the thing.
Okay. So, Supatease, do you feel the same way? Do you feel like sub should be the main PvP specialization for rogues?
I think it could be said for a lot of the specializations for classes. Like when you look at rogue, it's like you've got assassination, combat, and subtlety. Generally speaking, they're all functioning almost the same. It's just combat has some things in its toolkit that are overpowered. Like killing spree is too much damage, you can't peel it. Now, if you make killing spree peelable, then he's just going to get CC'd on it. He's going to do nothing. He's going to be weak, and then AKA unviable. Whereas subtlety is kind of you have shadow dance every minute. It's reliable. You can CC. You can cross CC with it well. And I mean, subtlety is a PvP spec. Like if you want to think like fundamentally, what is PvP? Like combat is more. I'm going to run at you. I'm going to attack you. I get this. I kill you. Whereas subtlety is like, okay, I've got to position this. I've got to get this CC so my healer can get this. And I don't know. Subtlety just fits historically, I think, as the PvP spec for rogues. I think when you're looking at classes and you want to try and increase diversity, you need to look at like if you look at mages, like Frost used to always be single target burst, setup, shatter combos, and then you had fire as an option being AoE, heavy damage, sustain. Like those are two iconic senses of a class. Like they're completely different. Whereas if you look at rogue specs, it's kind of like, I mean, yeah, you could try to make all three of them viable, but in the end, you're going to end up just making something overpowered. So I don't know if it's really not necessary to do it.
I don't want them to make all three specs viable. I think that's just way too many variables to be realistic, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Though I'd love it, but there's a whole nother variable, whole nother elephant in the room to take into consideration, and that's PvE viability that we have to share, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I'm not sure. So that's another thing to talk about, I guess, real quick. I guess this is kind of like a super in-depth question, but Doomsen, when it comes to PvE and PvP specializations or talents, do you think they should be separated in some way? And if you do, how?
I think it happened for a few abilities before that Blizzard actually did those changes that would only affect like one zone. You know, it would only be buffed in like PvP ground or whatever. And I think that's the thing they should do in general, often, to abilities, which surely would help the balance quite a lot. If it's going to happen is a different question. It's probably not going to happen.
So, I mean, like, we did see, what is it, like the PvP bonuses. As soon as you enter PvP, your stats go up, right? So, I think that's definitely looking in the right direction. I don't ever see, like, maybe even PvP realms separately, but I mean, like, this is all speculation whether or not it may or may not happen. But do you think that PvE is a big part of why we're having balance issues?
Yes, that is the reason DK is overpowered. It is the reason probably Comet Rogue got a few buffs throughout the season, even though everyone complained about them. And a few other classes as well. I mean, you know, Warrior got a huge buff. And maybe, you know, just steps that someone who plays PvP and, you know, doesn't care about PvE, he's going to read those patch notes and he's like, wow, they have no idea about the game. This obviously isn't the case, but...
right. So a little bit of empathy on their part, that all the different things they have to worry about, right? But Avenge, same question. So do you think that they need to separate PvE and PvP a little bit more? And do you have any ideas or like theory crafting ideas to how they could do that?
Well, like Doom said at the end, he said, you know, he looks at the patch notes and he's like, they have no idea what's going on. And that happens every time there's a patch and every time there's a modification, right? But on the same note, it definitely affects it. I don't think anyone can argue it doesn't affect it. But I think they are taking good steps. If you look historically at Frostbomb, they, you know, in Demon Bolt and Chaos Wave, they reduce those abilities by a certain percent when done to players. So I think if there's a huge outliner problem, they do take care of it. You know, there's also things that didn't affect PvE that went unnerfed for a long time, like the 8-second kidney, right? Like, why was that a thing? I mean, going back to combat rogues, like if I wasn't a ret back when they had 8-second kidney, I have no idea how my team would survive. Not a clue. They would die every 8-second kidney, right?
Yeah. Seriously, I love that. We were really maybe we were really good for that reason, but there was a lot of reasons. So that's another quick question I wanted to ask you, Avenge, is Rep Eldon's kind of fell off. We were kings there for a day or a week or so, and so what happened in your own personal opinion? I know there was nerfs to the set bonuses, but really, what changed?
Well, the biggest thing is like on beta, we were in a really good spot. And on beta, like it was much more balanced, and I feel live is even. I mean, Resto Druids were still the best on beta, I think, before the silence change. Once Priest got 5 second silence, they were the best. But before that, it was a pretty similar game to now, honestly, in my opinion, but just a little bit better. The problem with Rets is they had so many upfront cooldowns, and they could just blow people up, and they couldn't be CC'd during the wings. And I mean, that all would have been fine if everyone was geared and everyone had, the ability to defend themselves and more HP and more healing output and all that stuff. But they made balance changes when we were in blue still. And, because of that, we're bottom tier melee except for Windwalker, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I mean, they should have taken it slow, a couple little nerfs, wait for the gear, then look at the representation, right? And then see how many Rets are first 2 pages of the ladder and tweak that, right? But it's just negligence, in my opinion. Like, why would you make, there was like 3 weeks, and each week had a nerf. Like, they nerfed our set bonus, and what else did they do? They cut the two nerfs to set bonus, right?
Yes, there was
And,
there was the 2-piece and the 4-piece nerf. Yep.
I mean, what was the reason? Why did they need to do that so quickly, right? Like, sure, we were really strong in blues, but, right, wouldn't it made more sense just to wait a couple weeks, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so you feel like as though they nerfed us when we were really good, and then when we scaled with gear, it was too much? Is that... Okay.
Well, yeah, it's essentially exactly what happened. We had so many front-loaded cooldowns. I mean, the games were so short when we were in blues. I mean, on beta, they were thinking of adding dampening back. It was actually in one of the stages of beta because games were so slow-paced at full gear. Like, they were considering adding battle fatigue back in. Right, not dampening, sorry, battle fatigue.
Right.
And then once it got to live, I mean, everyone just one-shots each other, right? But the current meta we have right now is almost the same as beta, minus a couple small tweaks, right? There's been no major changes, really, besides a couple ret nerfs, right?
Right. All right. Well, I appreciate you answering that question. That was a little bit more personal, but, so I have a question on Twitter, guys, that I want to ask you guys, and the question is, why does Blizzard have such an obsession with AoE spells and abilities, Ice Nova, Orb, Combat, Comet Storm? Placing yourself next to your healer versus a mage means you can't burst. Drop the AoE BS, to be honest. Now, this is from Flash Best Modder. Flash Best Modder. I'm sorry if I butchered your name, but do you guys have any insight to that, Doomsen? Do you feel as though Blizzard has an obsession with AoE spells?
When I think about AoE spells, I think about PvE.
Right.
Which is surely the reason why a lot of abilities exist the way they do. And that might be the case why that is this thing. I'm really not sure about it, but I don't think AoE is like a PvP thing, beside warlocks, but that does also sing a target. And for mage, AoE in PvP is pretty useless.
Okay.
So
right. So
I think it's a PvE thing.
Right. Do you agree, Supa? Do you think that all the AoE in the game is somehow related to PvE?
I think that's probably fundamentally where it comes from. If you want to take a look at it like from a gameplay point of view, I mean, it's nice to have things in the game that someone needs to be aware of who they're hitting. Like, I mean, it can be abusive at times, but it's still like if my warrior hits whirlwind and breaks my full poly, it's like, whose fault is that? Kind of thing. Like, I don't know. I kind of think that it's kind of okay to have some stuff like that, but like for me as Boomkin, Sunfire is AoE. So when I'm in Solar Eclipse and if I'm trying to CC something, not myself personally, but like if I'm playing with a mage or a rogue, I need to be careful not to break a blind. Like I can't hit this ability. I need to worry about something else. But I think maybe there might be too many abilities that are AoE, and it's like if it's an ability that's in your core rotation, it might not be the best to put it on that. But maybe if it, like Ice Nova is your big damage, like I mean they're nerfing the stun on. I think everyone agrees that that should be nerfed, but like I think it's okay to have Ice Nova AoE damage, splash damage. That way it's kind of counterable to the amount of CC they have. I don't know, but that's the way that I look at it
I like
as
that.
far as like some abilities being AoE, but just not like core rotation things like that, or making it an option like putting in glyphs like this doesn't AoE and you lose something to take that, so you don't need to
Right.
worry about AoEing. But I definitely think it's PvE, like Doomsen said.
That's very interesting that you say that. It's kind of like almost a skill type thing, is being aware and being able to understand that you may break CC. But Avenge, what do you think? Is AoE does Blizzard have an obsession with AoE? I wouldn't say that it's an obsession, but what do you think about AoE? Did it stem from PvE?
I mean, I definitely think the mechanics, like for example, Destrolock Rate of Fire, to get the soul shards back in the day, right? I don't think that was
No.
considered for anything for PvP. I mean, I definitely think almost every AoE mechanic is for PvE, but at the same note, it does kind of add that extra layer of interestingness, right? Like specifically on Red, if you're Final Verge, you got to watch your Divine Storm if he's going for a trap, right?
Right.
I mean, even empowered seals, if you're Righteousness, you're trying to get your seal up and your trap's coming, you got to get that off, right? So it's kind of interesting. It adds an extra layer kind of accidentally.
Yeah,
I don't
like
think,
that.
Accidental skill.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Now with the nerf to final verdict, not to final verdict, but to the AOE range of Divine Storm, it'll be a little bit less. But man, the range on it was crazy. But I want to look to the future. I really want to look towards. I feel like we're getting a little bit down in the current balance of the game, but some
Yeah.
really exciting stuff is coming in patch 6.1. I'm really excited for it. So, what changes are you looking forward to the most, Doomsen?
Oh,
Sorry, the question was for 6.1. Are you looking
Yeah,
forward to
I heard
anything
it.
specifically? Okay.
Survival Hunter traps. I have been not a fan of it before Arena actually started. I faced a Survival Hunter in a skirmish, and I was wondering why I got trapped all day. And I actually tweeted a link about it right after, and I was like, I don't think that's the thing that ever should be in PvP. Traps are too easy to land, way too, and way too effective. It's 8 seconds CC, so that shouldn't be a thing.
Can you tell us real quick exactly, just for everyone watching, what is happening to Survival Hunter Trap?
I think Survival Hunter has a passive ability that reduces the cooldown of traps by 50%,
Yeah, something
and
crazy.
I think it's going down to 33%. So it's still, I think it's still going to be shorter than the marksman one, but at least you're not going to get trapped on cooldown.
Every 12 seconds, right?
Yeah, every 12 seconds. Yeah.
Same question for you, Avenged. What are you most looking forward to 6.1? Did you get a chance to read the notes?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, everyone thinks it's going to be a completely different game, but I see little changes here and there to everyone. So, I mean, it's going to shift a little bit, but I don't think any comps will spew out of nothing. I still think RMD God comp will be really good. I mean, there's a couple ret changes that are like, decent, powered seal specifically. I like that Ice Nova is not going to be a stun. It's going to be a
Root.
it's going
right?
to yeah, root thing. So it was really annoying, like trinketing and then just getting Ice Nova anyway. And it was really annoying
Yeah.
that it's on separate DR than stun and horrify. Or I guess it is a horrify DR, but so I'm looking forward to not dying instantly in Ice Novas, especially since it inflicts so much damage. If I play some more Ret DK, I'm looking forward to Druids not being able to just displace her as soon as they get strangulated.
Yeah.
Hopefully it opens up a couple more comp options. I don't think it will. I think Ret Harness will be the best, but that's sort of my opinion on it. I think they should do a little bit more. I think they need to make some change to the Purge game, and they haven't, and I'm kind of disappointed in that.
Yeah, like as soon as the season started, when it came to jumping from the beta to live, even on the beta, you could tell right away Purge is going to be an essential part of Arena on the beta. But Supatease, what are you looking forward to, man?
I think it might be like more minor than anything, but like I actually like this idea of making healers able to do a little bit of relevant damage. like they're buffing your Holy Paladins through Denounce and Holy Shock damage. I mean, you're probably not going to use Holy Shock for damage, but like I think I saw a video of Jim like 2v1ing as Holy or something. I'm not sure if that's a bug or if that's actually going to be what happens.
You said
But
that to me.
I think that's actually good. Like healers right now, like if you're a healer and you don't have a CC, like you don't really bring a lot of involvement outside of spamming purge. Like back in the day, priests were more known for like holy fire combos with their team, like participating damage. Like it shouldn't feel bad to like throw out a lava burst if you've got like a lot of CC, you're trying to push for that kill. You should like be able to engage with your team as a healer a little bit more. I think that's like a little bit of an interesting change that I'm reading here.
Hell yeah, dude. I love that they added that. I think that it's almost like a little bit of a skill increase cap for these healers, right?
Yeah.
They could get that damage in, you know? So, there's a couple things on the patch notes that I did want to go over real quick. And warriors, arms warriors specifically, with their slam buff and all their other buffs, do you think that that's going to be too much? Right now, I feel like warriors are pretty damn strong, but do you think that they're going to be overpowered come 6.1? Doomsen.
Whew, hard to say. I wasn't a big fan of the Mastery nerf that happened a month ago, I think.
Yeah.
Because, you know, that was like an insane number, what they buffed it by. Think a PvP change. Or
Yeah.
they still think they're bad in PvP, but,
Crazy.
you know, let's be honest, it's probably PvE.
Another PvE change. Avenge, do you think warriors are going to be stupid OP?
Well, I see they nerfed execute a bit, and I think that's what makes them pretty stupid right now. Because if you reach
Yeah.
execute range, you're dead.
It's over. Yeah.
You know, like in that RBG tournament, he talked about tab executing, and I mean, you could do that in arena if your team rots and someone's just low, they're instantly dead. It's sort of like touch. It's basically touch of death. I mean, I've never lived through an execute at low health. I don't know. I think the execute, like it's only 10% less to execute, but it's more overall damage. So I think they're going to be stronger. I think warriors are already one of the best melees. So
Supatease. Warriors is going to be gods.
I think Warrior is probably already like it's in a good position where it is right now. Like I think Warrior is much better designed as a PvP class in WoD than it was in MoP. Like your active mitigation with Shield Barrier, like it's more interesting. Obviously, Execute adds that layer of like, oh my god, I'm dead. But like outside of the Execute, it's a lot more interesting to play. From the Warriors that I spoke to, they feel that Avatar, like with a 1.5 minute cooldown, coupled taking the talent anger management, like you can almost reduce that to a minute cooldown with a 20-second duration. So I mean, it might end up making Avatar overpowered. That's something that is going to have to be played out, but it could end up being really strong, and I am actually pretty concerned about it becoming too strong.
Yeah, absolutely. So warriors, potentially their consistent damage is going up, but their execute is not going to be a 20% touch of death anymore, so that's good. But survival hunters, you were just talking about their trap a little bit earlier, Doomsen. You're excited about not being trapped every 12 seconds by a survival hunter, but is it too much of a nerf, do you think?
If it's too much of a nerf, it just shows that the design of the class is pretty bad. Because if a spec needs something that overpowered that should have never been in the game in the first place, bad design needs to be changed. And I think it's getting a few buffs regarding damage. I think Marksman gets, that's what I know for sure, but I think it's also getting buffed a bit, so over 100 damage. Anyone?
I don't think Survival's getting buffed.
Not their damage, no.
their talents are glaive toss,
talents?
barrage, power shot. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Oh.
So it'll affect survival. It'll affect
Right.
all, right?
Yep.
I think Hunter's going to be fine.
Yeah.
Because I don't think you need to land a trap on cooldown to actually make, to actually be that overpowered. I think Silver Hunter is pretty good anyway. And it's probably more fun to play against it now. So I think it's a good change for PvP.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So, the shamans, though. Everyone keeps talking about the double spirit link and how it's going to change shamans forever. But, Avenge, you were talking a little bit earlier about what's going to be happening. Was it you or is it Supatease? You guys were talking about there's other changes to shaman that are a lot more significant. Supatease, do you have any... What do you think about the shaman changes? Do you think that they're going to be good?
Well, like one that isn't like a direct buff to their class. It's more a buff to their utility. Like grounding totem is something that hunters have to deal with whenever they're fighting any shaman team when they want to land a trap. And it was just a practice technique to use your pet growl to get rid of it. It doesn't matter if the grounding totem's behind a pillar, hidden somewhere. You can get rid of with one button press and then go for your trap. So like this, removing the ability to remove grounding totem with those taunt abilities is I think one of the biggest buffs, at least for shamans versus hunters, any spec of shaman, let alone resto. But uh, obviously, there's a lot of just number buffs that I don't know if they're all necessary for shamans. I mean, shamans have always been weak to just getting trained by melee. It's just been that's if you play a shaman, you should already expect that kind of thing. And I still think shamans are in a good place even right now. Um, I would say that I am worried about them getting a little bit over buffed. Like, yeah, the Earth Shield changed from 50% and triggering 4 charges. Like, it's they're going to do a lot more healing basically, and it might end up being a little bit too strong.
Yeah, yeah. Real quick, I want to take a quick break to talk about a donation that I just got in. Sorry, guys. There's a $10 donation by Lawbringer, and he wants to shout you out, Avenge. He says he wants to shout out Avenge, Zev, and Eliz for competing in this week's tournament. Good luck, boys, and win it for the Rets out there. So just shout out to Lawbringer. Doomsen, I'm sorry, Avenged. What do you think about shamans? Do you think that they're going to be okay, or do you think they're going to be overpowered? I feel like, or actually, what I wanted to ask you, Supatease, before I go to you, Avenged, is LSD 2.0 coming back?
For some reason, that's a question I hear like every single patch. It doesn't matter what it is. It's like, is LSD2 going to be OP? Is LSD2 going to be OP? Is LSD2 going to be OP? I mean, I think right now it's viable. I wouldn't necessarily maybe say it's overpowered. These buffs to Shaman are obviously going to increase the survivability of it, but the biggest change to Moonkin was that they don't buff haste anymore. They buff mastery, and the main reason that LSD2 like was required to bring a Shaman was for mastery buff, so they would do more damage because that's how the comp works. But now that Moonkin's buff mastery, you're not necessarily locked into bringing a shaman. Like you can experiment, you can bring monk, you can bring paladin more frequently. I mean, paladin mastery buff too, but it opens your book for it. So I wouldn't necessarily like say LSD2 is going to be overpowered. It's not like there's a huge amount of changes to warlocks and moonkins that are going to blow it out of the water. So I wouldn't expect it to be any different. It's probably going to be around the same.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Okay, so I kind of want to get away from the specifics of these classes in 6.1. We're getting into like the hardcore like analytics and like guess games here, but I want to talk about compositions for 6.1. So Avenge, you said earlier that compositions that were going to be coming out aren't really going to change in your opinion. Do you think that there's going to be any new composition that's going to be viable come 6.1?
Personally, I'm gonna be trying out whatever I can. Right, I plan on running some more Ret DK. If it's gonna be better than Ret Honor, I doubt it. You're asking if I think anything else will emerge, right?
Right.
I don't really have any guesses. I mean, maybe some more warrior cleaves. I would think maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think there's big changes to make new comps. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think so.
Yeah, it's crazy. There's so many variables to take into consideration to really determine if something's going to be good or bad. So I guess I'll rephrase the question for you, Doomsen. Is there any compositions that you want to try, new compositions that you want to try come patch 6.1?
I don't think anything new is going to come for Druid, since we're actually going to be weaker. So I don't think we're going to have the luxury of being able to play whatever we can, what is the case right now.
Right.
And I think what's going to be really good for Druid, even better than now, is God Comp. And I think Avenge said it earlier that God Comp seems to actually get back to their name, because they're looking so strong that I'm actually scared of that comp actually dominating the ladder, and I think that's going to be the case.
Yeah. Supatease. Yeah, planning on trying anything new and exciting?
I mean, I'm already playing weird Moonkin stuff already, but I'm always doing weird stuff. I'm just known as that person to play double Moonkin Warlock for no reason. But I think like I think back in Mob when Feral Druids got trenched on, or I think it was that patch, like Feral, Shadow Priest, Shaman became really like rank 1 viable and really strong. I think you might see that come back up. Obviously, with all these passive damage buffs to Feral, all these passive damage buffs to Shadow Priest, this increased survivability to Shaman. And now Druids won't be able to displace their beast when they're silenced. Like Feral Druid, Shadow Priest can go to town on a Resto Druid. I think that might end up being a really strong comp. I think it was like FPS. I think that's what it's called. So Feral, Shadow Priest, Shaman is probably going to be like a new emerging comp. If there is going to be a new emerging comp, that's the one that I would pick.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm gonna go. This segment, it's kind of a segment I'm not necessarily confident about, but it's something that was requested quite often from the subreddit r world of PvP. And what they wanted me to do is they wanted me to ask you guys, or they wanted me to implement like a section that's just specifically talking about noobs and like the issues that noobs have in arena. And so like some questions that they had was I'll start with you, Doomsen, is for a new player in arena, what is like the most common mistake that they have, or the most common thing they overlook, in your opinion?
Mm, I'm actually giving lessons, so I'm dealing quite a lot with people not being that good in the arena, and I think the issue of most people is, the game is huge. Every class has a lot of abilities, well, less than before, but still, takes some time to count them all, and just all of it, like literally knowing what your opponents can do, how you have to deal with it, position wise and CD wise, and also your view on the game, because I often get the comment, I'm just focusing on my frames, I just look at
Oh,
on my rate
awareness,
frames,
right?
and
Yeah.
that's the issue. Like, how do I you know get my view, my sight away from just focusing on the rate frames? And my opinion is experience. I've been playing this game for long, and I had that issue too. But just constantly playing and actually looking at the classes, you read their abilities and try to find ways how to deal with it. Or, it's the year of Twitch, or the time of Twitch now, where you have the opportunity to go into streams and maybe have a kind soul telling you, like a streamer telling you what you have to do against that one ability. Like, how do I deal with it? And I think that's really helpful. Like seeking for help from higher players and just practicing.
Yeah.
Spam queue.
Absolutely. It's pretty crazy. A lot of people don't know this, but a lot of you guys offer coaching lessons. So, I mean, if you guys have a favorite player, like if you're a rep paladin and you're watching Avenge's stream, Avenge, do you offer coaching?
Could be open to it.
Could be open to it. Just go ahead and
Yeah.
send him a Twitch message, guys, if you want
Sure,
to get
man.
coaching lessons from. But what do you think, Avenge? What do you think is something that, as a newer player, all the newer players seem to overlook?
Well, a little bit different from newer. I mean, I feel like most people start while doing PvE, so the PvE players aren't used to the macros that you'll need in arena, the proper binds and dispel party 1 and 2, right? And they won't have arena 1, 2, and 3 macros. They won't have focus macros. And I feel like all those things are essential to be fluid, to have complete control over your character.
Especially a
I've played,
rep paladin.
yeah, I
Yeah,
used to,
rep paladin more.
yeah, I used to play a holy pally, and I've played with a lot of healers that didn't have party 1 and 2 target, party 1 and 2 bound to some of their insta heals, party 1 and 2 cleanse. Right, you have to
Yeah.
be instant quick with those kind of things, and the faster a new player gets used to those binds, the more fluid they are. And from that point, once they're fluid with a character, it's just queuing arena all day until they get good, right?
Right. Yeah. I used to have like something to go off of what you said earlier, Doomson. I used to on my YouTube channel create a series called Know Your Enemies, where I actually broke down every specialization so they could so newer players could kind of understand what it is that they're going to be going up against, And I think that once you get past understanding your enemy, and then once you get past really getting your key bindings and your macros to muscle memory, that's when you can really open your awareness up. But Supatease, Do you have anything else to add? Is there something else that most players are overlooking? Most lower experienced players are overlooking, like maybe a quick tip?
I think like most players, like Avenge was saying, their PvE focus. That's where you start. That's where I started, and like you're probably going to be fairly good at competent at healing. You're going to be good at doing damage. You'll end high on the meter, but you still might not know like cooldown management, what situations, what to use, communication with your team. Like it's much easier to play the game if you're transparent. Like if you make a mistake, like I missed my pummel, like be vocal with that. Like if you're not vocal with that, how is your partner going to know that you have no interrupt to stop something kind of thing? Like I think communication is probably one of the biggest things when you're jumping over from PvE or just jumping into PvP in general is make people aware of what you're using. Say like I'm using this cooldown, don't use this, don't trinket. Like communicating is probably most important than anything else for it.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you on that. That's something I didn't even think of, but even the idea of trying to be frugal with the defensive tools that you have in your composition, it was an idea aware of when I first started out. You know what I mean? Like, just like, oh, I had to press this button. You know what I mean? Even though I'm at my Shaman prop healing tide, you know, that wasn't even an idea in my head that I needed to like kind of bring the game as long as I possibly can. But so as for compositions, I feel like there is certain compositions and certain classes in the game that are a little bit more noob friendly when it comes to learning more about the game. Would you guys agree? What class would you recommend to someone who just swapped over from PvE, Doomsen, to become relatively successful in PvP, to just kind of learn the fundamentals?
Frosty K. I think Frosty K is you don't have a lot of binds, you have a lot of damage. And or Common Rogue, I think it's one of those classes who, you know, you can do things wrong, but you're still probably gonna do all right, and you know, still pull your decent damage. And yeah, I think I would play Frosty K if I would play again.
I like it.
I would play Frosty K and just. It's just not frustrating, in my opinion. You know, I think what's really frustrating is to always lose, always just, you know, you don't know what you're doing, you just lose.
Right.
And Frosty K and Common Rogue are really forgiving. So I think I would just say it's more enjoyable to probably play those few keybind classes that still do a lot of damage, over, for example, Mage.
Right. All right. Avenge. Any specific class that you would recommend to a PvEer?
Besides Frosty King, Combat Rogue, Warrior, and Hunter, probably.
Yeah. I always like to recommend Warriors because of all the comps available to them. Well, that was in MOP. Yeah.
I was even thinking of making a Warrior my ult just because I feel if you're already a melee, and you know, what do? They do damage and they have a little bit of side stuff to do, right?
Right.
So.
All right, Supatease, what do you think?
Yeah. I think it's the same thing. Like low utility specs are probably better. So like pure DPS, like it's already been said, Hunter, Warrior, Rogue, DK, like probably not something that has like defensive dispel for your party members. Like you might miss dispelling a hex or something and you feel like, oh, I just lost because I completely missed that. Like that's a big part of the game. If I were to like really say anything, like landing interrupts can be really hard, and that's probably one of the things like Moonkin. Like I play Moonkin and I like it because it's forgiving because your interrupts a minute cooldown. You're not really relied upon to constantly be like, okay, I can stop every deep sheep and it's my fault if I don't. It's kind of already designed that I can't do that. So I think Moonkin is a pretty good spec to pick up if you're starting out. Even though I just said, you know, with defensive dispel, but the rotation is very simple. It just got to rework, so everyone is still kind of new to it. If you wanted to try a new spec, it's also underrepresented, so I'm bringing it up. But I think it's a pretty fun spec. Most of your stuff is instant cast, so that makes it more leisurely. It's not so bad if you get interrupted now because you have multiple different schools and Star Surge isn't casted, so you're never locked out on everything. I think if you're going to pick a caster, like Moonkin is probably one of the best for a beginner.
Huh. All right, so classes, but back to you, Supatease. What about compositions? What's a composition that you feel is easier than most to pick up?
It depends on the meta game. Like it just depends on what classes are strong. Like if I were to say like an easy comp to play right now would probably be like Rogue DK healer. You kill the other healer. That's your only goal. You have no other plans. If it fails, you lose. There's nothing else. That's it. If you can find comps like that, those are probably the easiest ones to kind of like get rating, if that's what you're asking, like noob friendly comps to get rating. But I don't think it's good to be talking about this way. Like you should try and play whatever you're playing to the best of your ability, not just pick something because it's overpowered and easy.
Right.
Like even Rogue DK healer, you could do things that other ones don't and do them better. But I wouldn't say just like pick a comp because you think you're gonna get easy rating with it. You should pick something because you like playing it. You like if you like melee cleave, you like melee cleave. If you like hunter cleave, you like hunter cleave. If you like caster cleave, you like caster cleave. Like that's the nice thing about WoW is it's pretty diverse, and for the most part, there's usually one or two comps within the certain field that you can play and do it. I mean, obviously some specs are limited, like Red Paladins right now are pretty limited. Um, I think Moonkins are kind of limited, but you have options. That's like the one fun part about WoW in arenas that you have the option to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really do appreciate you saying that you need a different outlook on the game because mind you that these are the questions that I'm getting off of the noob segment of a forum that people wanted me to ask you. But Avenge, do you think that there's any specific composition out there that you would recommend for someone maybe to get familiar with like the meta?
Familiar with the meta?
Yeah, so like something that someone could
I
be
would,
relatively
yeah,
successful with.
I would play a hunter cleave to get familiar with the meta.
Hmm.
But to have easy success, like easy glad, I would play like a combat rogue melee cleave. Like exactly what Supatease said. I've seen 2200 combat rogue Frosty K rank 1 range right now. You know, they can farm up the easy ratings, right? But to learn the meta, I would say something like KFC, maybe like a hunter cleave.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too, is like a KFC. What do you think, Doomsen? Would you recommend any specific composition to understand Arena and just start learning how learning Arena?
Well, I went with Frosty K's first thing as class. Frosty K goes pretty well with a warrior, playing that TSG and tunneling one target and win. Um, I'm not quite sure if it is the best comp to learn the game,
Hmm.
but it's surely one of the comps that is really good to get success. Because
Yeah.
you can't do too much wrong. Like you don't have any super tricky tactics, that are really mind blown. It's simple tunneling.
Yeah, absolutely. So, something else that I want to talk about, guys. I'm switching off of the noob segment. I'm going to talk to you guys about cheating. Now, there's been a little bit of controversy in the forums, and even streamers and stuff like that have really talked about it. But it's bots in Arena, like kick bots and other bots like that. Can you guys like kind of spread? I feel as though this topic is being more and more spread around now, but it's not necessarily getting a lot of attention to what it is that bots actually can do or how to spot a bot. So if I was like a really inexperienced player, Avenge, how would you explain to me, or what would you tell me to look out for to spot a bot?
If you suspect it, I would just try to say, okay, if this guy is going to instantly kick, and then you cast your spell, and then see if he instantly kicks or not. So the bot's going to be pretty consistent. I haven't fought a botter who toggles their kick bot off for some spells, right? I've seen mass spell reflex, right? He doesn't toggle it off and only mass spell reflex some. So if it's not happening every time, he's probably not botting. And there's a lot of false accusations,
Hmm.
obviously, but
Right.
a lot of the time it's also not false, right? People get away with it all the time. I won't get into that. It's a different thing, right? But
Yes.
I would say look for consistency with the botting.
Right. So that's one way to spot a bot is if they're kicking like a robot. Is there any other way to spot a bot other than kicking? Doomson.
Um, Mass Reflect is quite a thing. I think it's not even that easy to spot a bot. I think if you play at low rating and you're facing someone who need to just outplace you by always kicking you, then I guess you can assume that is the case.
Yeah.
But I don't know what other ways there are. I don't know if the fake interrupt thing is in the game, that it automatically interrupts like it stops the cast so you can't get interrupted, or
It's
the other
weird.
things that we had before. But I think interrupting is like the main thing you can notice if someone's botting.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the interrupts, right? So with that being said, if how does it's hard for us to even determine whether or not someone's botting. Like sometimes there's false accusations, sometimes it's like incredibly obvious, but how if we can barely like determine if someone's botting, how do we expect Blizzard to catch these bots? How do you think Blizzard should catch these bots, Supatease?
Yeah, it's one of those things like you don't want to punish someone that's not cheating. Like, I mean, there's times where I fight players that can kick me instantly, and it's not a bot, and I know the player, and I know that they're not botting. But then there's some times where it's like, is that kind of like, he kicks me every time. Like I don't know, and it's kind of one of those things that everyone keeps talking about it, so everyone just keeps using it as an excuse, kind of thing. Like it can be proven, it can't be proven. How do you go about the punishment for it? Like, I would rather see Blizzard go after the companies that are making the bots and make it so they can't, rather than go after the players that are using them, kind of thing. Like, I mean, obviously you're using it, you should receive a punishment, but like you're not going to catch everyone. Like the easiest way to eliminate it as a problem would be to go after the companies that are making the bots and just making it not interactable with your game. Like I'm not a programmer, I don't know how all that stuff works, so I can't even tell you if that's possible. But from a legal standpoint, I don't know if Blizzard can even go after like some of the companies that are making the bots. But I think that would be better. And I know even outside of botting, people run scripts. Like people that are programmers, they don't even use the third party program. They run their own scripts to like automate their character, basically to play their character for them. And I've seen it, and I've seen people admit it. So it's really hard to punish. It's really hard to notice, and I think it's becoming more of a visible thing because now everyone's like, "Oh, I got kicked. It must have been a bot.
Yeah,
I'm not bad. It must have been a
it's a cop
bot."
out.
So I think there's sometimes where you can't really definitively say that it is or isn't. And like I said, it would be more interesting to know what Blizzard has for options for looking into it. Like, can they look at someone's computer and see what programs are running and see like, okay, well, they're running this program, they're botting. Like, I don't know if they have that capability.
Might be like against the law or something.
Yeah,
Exactly.
exactly. So like, I don't know what kind of capability Blizzard has to prove it, other than going into like an arena and looking and saying, okay, this shaman grounds every time trap is launched immediately, like even before it's visible, grounding is put down, or mass reflect is up before you can even physically see the animation, kind of thing, would be the only way that you could prove it, I think.
Yeah.
Like,
Blizzard
it's
kind of has their work cut out for them, man.
yeah.
Like, even in StarCraft, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the scene, but there's like map hacks and stuff that's going
Yeah.
around that they just can't prove, and these guys are even going into online tournaments and like cleaning house. It's really unfortunate, and I want to keep it competitive. But Avenge, do you have any idea, as to how to we could like we could spot a bot and prove it in game anyway? Any ideas at all?
Well, sort of a quote from, one of the senior devs himself, or designers, I guess he's not a developer, but as he said literally to my face, like the hacks team cannot detect it because it's off the global cooldown, and they're like, we're working on it, and like, they give some false hope there, and nothing's done. But I also know that their hacks team is bound by strict procedures and certain philosophies, and I think for some of this cheating to go away and a lot of this bogging to go away, that has to be looked at and it has to be changed.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, it's difficult. Doomsen, any ideas to how we could stop them?
I think recording games is kind of helping, and then analyzing the game, because bots tend to interrupt in a pattern of the exact same millisecond. So I think going through a VOD and having the like the millisecond timer on when the the interrupt actually goes off and just see a pattern in it, I think that is the way how you could figure out if someone's spotting or not. I
Yeah,
think
if you
that's a
have
pretty good way.
proof in the millisecond, and it's down to the milliseconds, and there's a pattern there, I think that's some pretty damning evidence. But as a community, I think it's our jobs to really bring to light like these botters and kind of shun them a little bit. But at the same time, there's also botters that come out and will admit it right on a forum. So um, I don't know. It's unfortunate, but I'm glad that there's some more awareness coming to bots. It's becoming like a cop out, like you said, Supa. But at the same time, like there's people that like for people like me who's at like a lower caliber, this is brand new news, you know. So, but also another form of cheating, which has been kind of plaguing the PvP community forever, is DDoSing. Now, I mean, there's proxies and stuff like that, but Supa, do you have any specific ways to prevent DDoSing? Any specific websites or anything? Any advice to someone who wants to prevent themselves from getting DDoSed?
I could take my own advice by saying this, but don't trash talk anyone.
I like
Just
that.
be friendly. Just be a decent human being to everyone, and you're probably not gonna piss anybody off who may or may not be able to do it. And like I'm not a computer genius, and I don't even know like anything about it. So I would just say be a decent human being, and you probably won't have any problems with anybody.
Oh gosh, that's awesome.
I mean,
What do you think, Avenged?
There's a few different methods. Essentially, the only thing you can do once they have your IP to protect yourself is change it. If they have your IP, you're quite screwed. Personally, I have a failover internet, so I have two connections. So if they somehow mysteriously and magically get through a proxy, I'll have another one that'll automatically come up, and I'll get a disconnect, but it'll be back in the game. So
Whew.
essentially, if you know someone has your IP, I wouldn't even bother queuing. I would call your ISP and get them to change your IP, or if they won't let you, turn your modem off overnight. If you have a dynamic ISP, usually the least time is 8 hours or something like that. So if you keep it off overnight, then you'll probably wake up with a new IP. As far as preventing it, there's a lot of guides. On Arena Junkies, there's a decent one. A couple free methods, and I'll link that in the chat.
Yes, please.
So
Hey,
it goes, yeah, it goes through a couple different methods of doing it. It can use the same proxy as a Tor browser, which is free. There's also a couple subscription websites. If you're not too tech savvy, you can pay like $3 a month. I know a lot of people use proxy.net. I'm not endorsing them or anything, but if you want an easy like one-click method and you don't mind spending a couple bucks a month on it, go for that. There's also a lot of other guides on different websites, not specifically to WoW. On League of Legends forums, there's plenty of guides. On OwnCore, I know there's a good proxy guide that I use myself. And I mean, people hit off a proxy once in a while. You get disconnected from Skype, but it's a free method to protect yourself. So.
Holy fuck, we asked the right guy, huh?
But, yeah, I guess.
Doomsen, do you have anything to add to that?
The guides are really good. Actually, when you look at them, you find out a few options that you can even do without a proxy, just in Skype, by actually being able to hide your IP by from strangers, by not allowing anyone to see your IP that is not a contact of yours. I think that's a pretty good thing. And if DDoSing happens to be too big of a thing, I'll just decide, to make a new Skype, or to be like, okay, I'm going to use one of those other programs there to communicate.
Just being prepared, right? Just doing your homework and making sure, like, if you're competing and you're a highly competitive person and you got the rating to back it up, I mean, you're gonna need to proxy up nowadays. So I really do want to stress that. I want to make it more known throughout the community because I want to get rid of cheating altogether. But something you brought up earlier, Doomsen, that I want to transition to was maps. Now, you said that maps. Do you feel like maps need a change?
I mean, they look nice, but I don't think that every map is that awesome. Like, for example, for me personally, it's Runes of Lordaeron. I constantly I'm not sure if I'm actually in line of sight or not. And you randomly get stuck at things. They're like barrels, little barrels in the water, or whatever it is. I don't even know if it's water. It's green, be whatever, and you can get stuck on them. And it's just like you're running away from something, you get stuck in that, and you die. And you don't have the character control in a game like WoW, or generally like a game that you have the full control of your character. So I think having those kind of things in the game, those small things, they're just randomly there, to make the game look cooler, are literally making it worse regarding balance. Like, I hate to randomly, like Druids of Lordaeron Tomb, the one side is like broken and part of it is like shattered. And if you go over it, like you just fall over it. Or you
Yeah.
get stuck in it and you can't get over the tomb, and then you get in that fear that, you're trying to avoid, or you're behind one of those small pillars, but you're thinking last time, but you're not, because somehow, like, a hair or your arm is somehow not out of sight, and, you
Yeah.
happen to get in that fear. And I think that's really annoying. I think maps, you shouldn't be able to get stuck anywhere. I think it should be like an even ground.
Yeah.
But I don't think if that's possible with the graphics they give them, or they put into the game.
So you think they should add more maps?
That too, which would also help the banning system when you just think about, not just banning
Yeah. When it comes to,
comps,
like,
you can also
banning,
ban maps.
right? Yeah, that was something that I want to talk about when it comes to BlizzCon. There was a point where it almost seemed like every single time a team had the ability to choose what their next map was going to be, they won it. And I think it was, I forgot, I thought it was I think it was Zuni's team going up against the LSD2.
Yeah, that was a good example.
Yeah, where I felt like every single time Zuni's team lost, they got to choose the map, and then all of a sudden they could set up the kill. Or like, so there's a huge advantage there. But Supa, do you think that the maps right now are needing a revamp? Do you think we need new maps? What do you think?
Well, like I would say, like right now, the more prominent things is like Mistweaver Monk on Blade's Edge Arena is not the same Mistweaver Monk on any other map.
Yeah.
You you fight it if there's a melee cleave, if it's anything, you try and CC it. It is a completely different class when you're playing it on Blade's Edge Arena. Same thing with classes that have knockbacks. I mean, they've added in the ramps, which is a good change to make it more balanced. Myself personally, like the idea I was throwing around in my head was even not designing more complicated maps or different maps. Like in my opinion, Tolvaron was like the best addition because it's similar to Nagrand. It has a little bit more distance, so it's a little bit more defensive. Maybe instead of making completely new maps, you reskin the maps that are well balanced. So like you could have two Nagrand arenas that are the same map but they look different. Like you
Yeah.
can put it, I don't know, Terracar Forest. Like I'm just naming a place and it's got 4 pillars. It's the same distance. It just looks different. That way you're reducing the percentage chance to get a map that is maybe more unbalanced, like Runes of Lordaeron or Blade's Edge Arena. So you could have 2 Tolvaron arenas, 2 Nagrand arenas to possibly queue into. It just reduces the likelihood because there's some queue sessions where I play and it's like Dalaran Arena, Dalaran Arena, Dalaran Arena, like 8 games in a row, and it kind of gets overspewed, and it kind of sucks to lose a game and be like, man, if that was on Nagrand, we would have won. Like, and
Yeah.
it feels bad when you lose like that, but it's part of the game too, and I think it's good to have different maps. But if I were to add new maps, I would probably just reskin ones that are already there that are well balanced like Nagrand. But that was just an idea I'm throwing in my own head. So
I like it, man. What do you think, Avenge?
To go with what Supatease said on Blade's Edge Mistweaver, I mean, Warlock, the same thing.
yeah,
Like, you can't kill a Warlock if it's on Blade's Edge. I mean, if I run Ret Decay or Ret Hunter, I can't kill a Warlock on Blade's Edge. It's not happening. So, pretty much that is my only problem with any of the maps in WoW right now, are teleport classes on Blade's Edge. I like the ramps they added. I think it was during Kata they added the ramps. That was definitely quite nice. Maybe it was during
Oh,
Mop.
yeah,
I don't
yeah.
know.
Mop. It was
Yeah, it was
Mop.
in
But I remember before those ramps, I would have more complaints about Blade's Edge with knockoffs. But
Even
Oh,
down.
God.
yeah,
Oh, man. Blade's Edge.
I
Good
remember
and bad
doing some
memories.
5v5s on Blade's Edge, and whatever team had more knockoffs won Blade's Edge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something I want to know. I think even though that there is obvious advantages to certain maps, maybe that teleport on monks might be a bit too big of an advantage, but I do like that there is advantages for certain compositions and stuff like that, and vice versa. You know, like there's disadvantages for your team and there's an advantage. Just like there's advantages for what comp you're playing and disadvantage for what comp you're playing against. You know, I think that does bring like kind of an exciting variety. It's not completely balanced as you can imagine, but it's gonna be kind of hard. I do love the Grand Arena, and if there was like 7 Grand Arenas that we got to choose from, I would be stoked though. On another note. Warriors right now. We talked about it really briefly before the show, and this is the last thing I'm going to talk to you guys about. But like Warriors, they're DCing on charges and stuff like that. Do you guys think that this problem's been around for forever? When exactly do they DC, Doomsen? You said that you had a little bit of knowledge on when it is that they DC.
I think the biggest time when that happened used to be in Cataclysm. At the end of Cataclysm, when you just happen to DC everywhere. You know, you would walk about over a stone or something that isn't like straight, and you would instantly disconnect most of the times. It has been there in Mob too, a bit. And in Words of Journal, well, of course as well. I actually emailed Holinka about it. I think 5 months ago, and that was one of the reasons why playing with MC as a priest could backfire really hard, because you know, if you MC someone, your camera goes behind the target, and I think everyone who has ever played priest and used their mind control knows that you probably once disconnected or a few times, and it just seems to be a thing with the camera angle that the game can't deal with, and you just disconnect. Yeah, it's really weird. It's just the way how the camera moves. It's 100% the camera. I'm 100% certain on that.
Oh, well, you know, spreading the word about it seeming to be the camera may help them fix it one day, so that's definitely interesting. But that's my last topic for today, guys. I think you guys answered. I feel so much more ready to go into this next tournament tomorrow, commentating with you guys' newfound knowledge for me. But I appreciate all you guys for coming on. I really do. It means a big deal to me. I'm gonna go ahead and upload this this video as a VOD, so you guys can check it out later. I'll tweet it and stuff like that. But Supatease, do you have any shout outs or any plugs you want to give? Maybe your Twitter?
Yeah, you can follow me at Supatease on Twitter. Shout out to my warrior buddy who played threes with, Laros. I hope to play threes with you after this sometime. Don't dodge me. But yeah, I think everyone should be pumped up for 6.1. I really hope that we can get some of the things like brought down and other things brought up, have some more diversity. It's nice to have a change. But yeah, so I'm looking forward to Tuesday. I think everybody is.
Absolutely. Avenge, any shout outs, plugs, stuff like that?
Just to my DK buddy Vinvicta, a couple people in the chat, a couple of my old friends, Dorothy, Dillypoo, of course.
Of course.
Yeah, I know my girlfriend Veronica might be tuning in from time to time, so she likes to watch tournaments too, so shout out to her.
Wow.
That's about it for me. Just follow me at Avenge TV.
Follow Avenge at Avenge TV. It's right next to his camera. Doomsen, any shout outs, plugs?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter if you want to, at Doomsen. Wow. Shout out to I actually want to shout out the Blizzard dev team that's focusing on PvP, that, you know, happen to bring very good results from time to time, even though few tweets earlier this expansion of myself haven't, you know, given that opinion, but I think they're doing a good job at, you know, trying to fix what they can do, their capability, without affecting, you know, what they're able to.
Yeah, the
without
direction,
destroying PvE.
the overall direction I feel is a lot more PvP oriented, and I love it, and I thank him for it. So, follow Doomsen. His little Twitter is right underneath his camera there. I got a couple shout outs too. The first shout out that I want to do is to TOC, a Tournament of Champions. It's going to be going down on Saturday and Sunday. Make sure to tune in for that, guys. There's some Avenge. Are you taking part in that?
Yeah, I'm signed up for a Tournament of Champions and the GCD tournament.
Well, yeah.
I'll be up both as long as there's no crazy conflicts. So.
Yeah, there's no time. Well, we did separate the times quite a bit to make sure that was going to be okay. But yeah, shout out to those guys. Definitely go and follow their stream, and I'll link the stream in the chat a few times. Follow their stream. Get ready for that tournament. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be this weekend. Tune in for that. Big shout out to my team over at GCD TV. Behind the scenes, we have Hannah. She's my fiance. She does like everything. And then we have the Breaker. He's my co-host. He's my best buddy. And then we also have Sai. And Sai is behind the scenes helping us out with emails, helping us out with a whole bunch of stuff. So shout out to all those guys. I really appreciate it. And that's going to be the end of the show. And I really appreciate all you guys coming on, man. Supporting this show out of nowhere and just really supporting the PvP community in a whole. So good on all you guys. And I'll see you guys next time. Later, guys.
See ya.